maybe. I think it's working. We'll give it a few moments. According to the AI archons, we are now currently online, or currently live. The stream has been initiated, and we'll give it a few moments. Usually, when it comes to YouTube, they give me an even longer kind of like a delay period. You know, they'll give me somewhere between like 14 to 15 seconds off. So you guys will be receiving this transmission from the past. You guys will be receiving today's transmission from the past, the distant past, 15 seconds ago. And so there we go. We are definitely live. It shows up. And so everybody, hello. Once again, welcome to the School of Multidimensional Intuition. If you guys know me, you know I'm going to instantly click on Facebook. So I'm going to click off the screen and make sure Facebook's actually letting my stream on. It is a well-known fact. Every single live stream I do, there it is on Facebook. It's turned to only me. It's a totally private thing. And so thank you to the Facebook AI. Thank you to the YouTube AI. And thank you to everyone that's watching. We made it. We were kind of sort of nearly late. We had all kinds of fun glitches with technology. And if you know me, you know that's kind of part of the journey. Last week with Jenny Constantine, we also had a wild and interesting and really fun pre-show glitch. And so it happens yet again. But today we are joined by just one of the people who at the really early stages of my journey of awakening, at the really early stages of figuring out like, who am I and what am I meant to do? And wow, there's actually this very specific thing that I'm really good at. How does that work? How did this come about? What do I do with it? At the early stages of my awakening journey, there was this group of people on the earth plane that I somehow just discovered. What I come to find out later on is spirit actually brings people into your sort of field of view. Some people call them frequency carriers. Some people call them key holders. Other people are just, they're just there and they will activate and give you a frequency along the way. Seanbond was one of the people that at a very early stage in my journey gave me a confirmation of certain things that were going on in my life without even knowing that that's what I was going to ask him about, without even knowing that that's what the whole question was. Sean was able to give me just a piece of something that I knew was going on in my life. He gave me a name for it, and he gave me an understanding that something was happening to me was real. And I think that there are not too many people like that within our soul group that are, that will come to that level of understanding within themselves that can actually look into your energy field and see what's going on. One of the things that I have learned as a professional intuitive, as a psychic or a healer or whatever you want to call it, is that we are really just looking through keyholes into other people's energy field. We're really just kind of looking through this little crack into what's going on in their timeline. And really, it's about what the beholder understands. It's about what the beholder, meaning me in that case, was able to perceive and understand about myself. And so Sean Bond was a very important figure in that. And so anyway, we're going to be doing a bit of a chat here today. I'm going to be bringing Sean in a few moments here. But before we get started, I want to thank you guys for hanging out. If you're one of the few people that has found this channel in the sort of YouTube multiverse, thank you for finding us. Please do hit the subscribe button. I never have like numbers related goals. I'm not one of those people that ever courts numbers on social media, but we are trying to get to 5,000 subscribers, hopefully, whenever we can. And so if you're one of the people that lingers in the background and you're like, I don't know, maybe I should subscribe to this channel, do it now. And then you can have a really cool moment of satisfaction when I say one thing you don't like and you can instantly cancel me. Everybody's doing it nowadays. You can just cancel me later at a drop of a hat. Just boom, I'm out of here. And so in the meantime, help us get to 5,000 subscribers and subscribe to this channel. And so hello, everyone. Hello, Kimberly Rupp. We have some amazing viewers. Thank you guys for coming back here over and over and over again. Hello, Kimberly, Brooklyn Way. Good to see you. Shannon Legros, Sunny D. I've seen you here before as well. Catherine Q. Miss Liz White Swan, really good to see you guys. Tasha Huck, Rhea Dittler, very good to see you. Thank you for hanging out. You guys have kind of heard the call and got summoned into this strange live stream. There's about 2.5 billion other ones going on right now, and you made it to this one. So congratulations. That said, we're going to go ahead and bring in Sean in just a moment here. And so, yeah, once again, here we are live from a strange realm, you guys. We're going to bring in none other than Mr. Sean Bond. Thanks for being on the live stream. Thanks for being available. How are you? What's going on in your world?
Hey, thanks for having me. Honored. Lots. Oh my God. So much. Like lists just for days and a lot of experience. I just got back from traveling to Florida, so enjoyed my birthday for that, and a little bit before that, I went to Kansas and some other places around the country, doing some grit work and a lot of stories with that, and also working website and business and expanded what the earth needs. How about you? What kind of stuff you've been working on?
Man, for us over here, like I said before we came in here, the last year, which I think has been about a year since actually, wait, hold on. Before that, happy birthday, by the way. How old are you officially?
29.
29. And so if you had to guess, how many Earth years do you think the sort of higher self soul aspects that you're working with are? How old like would you guess if you had to?
Oh God, I feel like I'd be bragging even if I
That's
make
okay.
a
That's
little bit
okay.
of
Be real. Be real.
that.
I know it's such a dumb question. Get ready. There's going to be even more.
Like, so are you saying for like the expansion of this life, or like lives on this planet? Are you like the compressed time, or like all of existence?
I would say, how about for today, we'll go with lives on this planet. Human realm interactions. How many years do you think you got underneath there?
Well, I got here when Earth was starting becoming a planet, but I do a lot of time travel back and forth, so there's a lot of repeating. So kind of like based on that more, but yeah, and I also do compressed time. And there's a lot of different realms that will have different speeds, similar to like the Narnia disclosure concept, and I mostly will see that with like hell realms and stuff. But if there's like a purpose for getting the goal of the realm done quickly, then that'll also have that effect.
Yeah. So basically, I'm asking you to quantify something in a form that cannot be quantified numerologically. I don't know if that's the right term. It's like, but yeah.
I'm sure it's stuff similar with you too.
Yeah.
And a lot of our viewers.
I have a feeling it is. I have come to understand enough about time to understand that I know nothing about time. But if there's one thing that I think I have been able to kind of reach the mere surface of, is that it is a sentient, flowing, ever-changing, constantly moving back and forth and editing itself sort of an energy. What do you think about that statement?
Like that, yeah. That's a great way to describe her voluptuousness of compliment. Yeah. She's got curves, and she's really, changing and constantly growing and getting better, cultivating herself like a garden, and branching out and colliding, and all existence is met, all conceptualization starting in each form of mind and choice points and decisions, and then branching off with how much interest there is in those experiences, and then having that solidified in frame so that it can all exist, but like there will be more so with more people voting on wanting to experience, or sorry, there's some noise going off in the background.
That's all good. I have a question.
Everything in the moment. So she's kind of an allusion to what we are now, but they're based on there being more than this experience. But like time and space in oneness is also like a beautiful expression of seeing the end goal of achievement, and what an experience needs in time to unfold and meet the knowingness and growth that a being needs to go through, and then expanding that out in like kind of like octave cables of light, so compressed that then expand up openly on like a television so that we can experience it. And same thing with the reality.
Yeah.
So everything can kind of be like one singularity form and then expanded outward and opened up more and more and for more detail that houses all the experience.
Yeah, I feel you. And I also love the multi-layered level through which your like communication style continues. And for those of you guys that are watching, and I mean this very, very sincerely, Sean, you are one of the most telepathically kind of tuned in individuals, because you're one of those people where it's like, I will listen to you talk, and there's a whole other kind of like an internalized conversation that will be going on another level. And it seemed like within that space, and this is us jumping off the cliff for everybody that's watching. Within that space, it looked like you were literally opening up and sort of blooming some sort of almost like silhouettes of you within time, one after the other, and the way they kind of curve back around and join into what I believe you were saying a few moments ago. And I guess this is my first kind of weird question, which we're literally jumping right into. You said that people on Earth, or in your own way, you sort of indicated that we are voting on another stage of experience, or voting on a chapter of experience right now. And I kind of take that to mean that us as a multidimensional collective are sort of adding our energy or our understandings into maybe what we might call wavelengths of reality right now, things that might be about to take place. And so with that said, and I know I do really weird, long-winded questions. With that said, I want to get your observations on a certain thing. And that is, what do you think people are voting on? What experiences do you see coming up the pipeline for people? And you can answer that on a soul level, on a physical level, on just kind of whatever shows up. And so what do you think?
Beautifully said. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Many depths for every person that like relooks at timeline and what is needed in this experience. What we're voting on, it'd be a lot of layers of different things, multiple at once. But then you can like, what's the ultimate goal that needs to be held for sure, and then going forth, and that's shared amongst everyone. Most of it will be an experience strong enough to change us in every fiber of our being down to the core, and lasts for lifetimes, even if we forget, is the main goal. And that being for everyone's individual like weaknesses and strengths and their like genius within and what they need to be in every moment, and for like lifetimes after this point, and other worlds that they'd be incarnating on, that they take what they learned here to go there and in mastery, and the challenges that they'll be overcoming there, and what they need to be strong enough to in solidified, resilient in their soul, their freedom, their constitution, their consciousness, that voice inside that tells them right and wrong, and their intuition and inspiration. So all that is like an accumulation of what they did in previous times and lives, and things that they need in the moment now that they've worked on for a long time. So there's like a large room of victories that we've gone through to achieve the personality of us, and the things that we're facing in our shadow that we don't like, that we want to transmute into the goal, that led into the goal to have the universal creation of our being, as we also strive to be universal creators, and have that locomotion for the future. Voting on as well for this specific timeline, going more like what we're facing. The biggest things that like hold back a lot of other stuff in experience that's been kind of comprised in the restarting of our timeline over and over again to get it just right, is to hammer in to our consciousness, not to give our power away to external forces, and to pull ourselves up from the bootstraps and take our power back for ourselves, that we are the ones we're waiting for, all that, and not give ourselves out to external saviors or the all the different things that would show up one after another, like, hey, we'll save you, and then ended up enslaving us or making it worse, or still not ultimately learning the lesson, which is taking back our full sovereignty and having moral code and ingrained understanding of that we're all one and we don't need to be fighting each other, and we can have our paradise, have our cake and eat it too. We can.
I feel you. I have an immediate and bizarre non-sequitorial follow-up question, which is probably perfect, because if you know me, I'm like the most non-sequitorial person, like anywhere. We'll sort of be going down one road, and then it's like we're going to turn over here, and suddenly we are on the topic of something that actually I've been wanting to ask people about, and you're one of the you're literally the first person on here that we can talk about it with publicly. So for everyone watching, this will be an awkward speed bump in our show. Get ready.
Fun inertia bear.
Totally.
The inertia dampeners on our ship, so we're good.
Oh, totally. I would like you to comment on, if you can, the rise of what I believe to be the training wheels of the sort of these kind of AI network known as the metaverse, and how I believe humans are being sort of programmed to kind of add our consciousness to this sort of pocket dimension AI created network. And so that's a little bit of an awkward way to articulate it. But what do you think about that? What do you see with respect to this, to the metaverse pocket dimension that's showing up now? What do you think?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, because it's more depthful than what most people are willing to talk about. And the words you said with the pocket dimension, that even allows me to go forth into different conversation that I'd have with normies. So
go for it. Go as weird as you can.
So a lot, because there's like colliding agendas with it. We have the ability to transmute and flip any negative thing that comes to us, so we can, there's good things to it because we have the ability to turn it into a positive. The negatives are fairly obvious with the transhumanism agenda and getting people out of this reality and making a difference in this game, and then being distracted at a huge whole new level. And then newer generations, my God, they're going to be pretty gullible to it. So, and then what we learned from the example of Ready Player One, where they just let the whole Earth go, and it sucks, and it's easy to control people. And
do you think that's possible? Is that a timeline that's being sort of created for us, or one that we're being kind of ushered into making? What do you think?
Oh yeah, they love taking. I mean, a lot of them came up with these ideas before a lot of movies come out, but the elite psychopaths is the things they come up with that they permeate in our culture, like to try to get us to like it and be pre-programmed to it and accept it. And it's a lot of things they do are obvious, like, oh, these filthy humans, let's get them 6 feet apart and wearing masks all the time, and don't let them touch our food. They're pretty bad, but they're fairly losing a lot of power. That still takes with the constant tug of war and no one to give up and succumb to the hopium of, oh yeah, we won already, gotta keep tugging that.
So I'm gonna awkwardly interrupt, which I do constantly, but I hear a lot of people talking about how, the light is winning. What are you talking about? They're totally losing strength. This is don't worry, everything's
let go of that rope.
We're all gonna ascend. And I have to be honest, as a person who kind of works within what we would call at least shades of the spirit realm on a literal daily basis. To me, it looks very much like we're actually in the stage in which the grasp is dramatically tightening. Yes, when we look at the inevitability of it, we could say, yeah, totally, the light always wins. But one of the things I've come to also understand about our cycle on Earth is that it's not about the light winning over the dark. It's about us balancing and making a choice within ourselves. And so that said, like what do you think about the tightening of like the control structure on planet Earth? Because, there's everyone's getting a certain type of medical treatment. Everyone's getting a certain type of this or that. We're all getting corralled and separated, like you were saying. Are we going toward a Ready Player One sort of reality? Or are we heading towards some form of, and I won't even say the word, but it feels like an uprising later on, I'll kind of use like the mild version of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd also like to get your words on this as well. So the closer we get to the lights, taking back the power from the King of the Hill battles of all the different energetic systems, such as the spirit, the astral, the ego, the shadow, the magic, the force, the permeance of the environment and different structures, and the land, the grid working, the houses of power, the constructs in people's mind, the collective consciousness, and every aspect of government, mind control is the word in government. So control of that, and then how that works in our internal systems. It's going to get the dark's going to ramp up and get more ferocious like an animal in the corner the closer we get. So it's not like we're going to ease up as we're getting close. Like a lot of people, there's like footage of people that have thought they won the race right before they hit the finish line, and somebody comes right behind them and takes over. So never doing that. And I understand the need for hope, because that also helps a rat swim in like scientific experiments. The rat will swim for hours longer if it has hope that it will be saved. But if it stops you from working and doing what you need and what you came here to do, then it's worse. And so a lot of those people that say don't worry and do nothing or just stay at home, or there's a lot of false light. I've had to work stronger, more in these past few years than I've had to any time before, in helping the planet to counter the agenda that's going on to take away people's sovereignty and freedom, and the forced inoculation and dumbing down a society, and the frequency fences, and all these ways to make people sick. There's a huge agenda for like whether people want to believe it or not. It's been disclosed in like Bilderberg group meetings in documents in like 2014 that the biggest concern of the top 1% psychopathic elites that run societies, they think they're based on predictive models, they're losing control. Predictive models run by AI. I think they're losing control, and unless they lower the population considerably, they will lose, which is, the good news. So what they're willing to do to lower the population is concerning. So my main thing has been to counter anything that's been wanting to steal the righteous authority of death and life, balancing scales of the planet, who's allowed here, who's not allowed here, and the things and giant multidimensional predators that have been stealing authority in those subjects and beyond, to cause people to leave that shouldn't be leaving, and also dominate them and mind control them, to where more people live, as well as if they would die, then probably they'll probably have a fair amount of illness, and then they'll understand what's causing that illness, which will then make more people wake up and bring more ways to shake the deck of cards, or the house of cards that's holding up the pyramid of darkness.
Yeah. I see that coming actually quicker than we think, possibly within the next 2 to 3 years. as we see a very, very dramatic drop in birth rate and an increase in a very particular types of birth defects. And then we start to understand the concept of nano-neural toxicity. And then people finally come to the stage in which, yes, there will be some form of a sort of outburst that takes place. And yeah, I really feel that. Thank you for your answer on that. And I'm gonna kind of follow it up with an. Oh, and actually, I just want to take a real quick moment here to kind of say thank you to those of you guys in the chat. I keep on looking at your comments, and every now and then, people that watch us, they'll know I'll be right about to say a thing, and I'll like, kind of look over at someone's comment, and I'm like, oh damn. And so yeah, thank you, Brooklyn Way, Shannon. LeGros, just a quick comment from Shannon LeGros, and maybe you can just kind of respond to this, Sean. And she says, just my take, creation is imprinted within us all, the infinite, no fighting, no duality. This isn't an outer conflict, it's an inner balance we are moving to, question mark. It's more integration, not fighting. What do you think about that?
That's a good way to put it. I like the words used. Okay, I like look into that more a little bit. Yeah, so yeah, and I'd also love to get your comment on like the previous question and also of this.
Oh yeah, totally. Here,
so feel free to go on to that. Yeah, so like, yeah, we're like a reflection of an entire universe, and if we find those mirrors of the external that we find needs a balancing act or great change into its next cycle to get out of its despair or negativity or harm, then we can see those reflections in ourselves and cause great change and emotionally transmute and bring the balance within ourselves. And those usually will affect those external things for greaterness, especially if we master them in ourselves, and then help the greater collective consciousness to reach that in fullness, and like the nursing of the collective consciousness, like a 100th monkey effect in ability and focus within the infinite, no fighting, no duality. This isn't an outer conflict. Sure, that can be a perspective. I guess it depends on the definition of fighting or conflict, because some would be in the middle of a fight, and if you said that to them, they'd be like, okay, how should I define this? Internally, yeah, I mean, you don't have to be in a fight, and the way to overcome it is to bring it to peace and hug the thing you're fighting, and come like put. Usually, when things are in polar opposition, they have to make boundaries that are strong enough, and then have it so that they don't step on each other's boundaries, and then they start to be brought to peace, and then they can start trading and commerce, and then get closer and closer into eventual unity. So that would be the inner balance. Or moving to I'd agree. It's more integration, not funny. Yep. So I'd agree with pretty much. Yeah, and fighting things. I've never found that like internally or externally to like really be beneficial. It lasts forever pretty much. If you do go down that path, or you'll keep finding more things that want to come after you and keep wanting to fight you. You get more and more attention.
It's like the frequency, it draws it in.
Yeah, you don't, and in real war, you don't know who you're going to harm. So it ends up making, like how in the Middle East, we end up making more terrorists by bombing them. So I agree. The value I see in war technology is now like how most of everyone's been involved in the past, and we have wisdom and value and tech that goes along with that. So then we can transmute all those tools of war into tools of peace that we then be very good at entering into war zone conflicts and then bringing them to conclusion or peace, and then ending them, which is also very valuable.
Yeah, I feel you. I like the way that was. Yeah, I like the way that was articulated to kind of to kind of rewind very briefly to comment on the previous question, which, as I make this comment, it will probably be a great diversion from the heart of the original question, because I have a feeling you're like me and like the stream of consciousness moves on and you're like, well, let's see if we can go back. And it's sort of like you're going upstream. So you're like, okay. But sort of from what I took from that exchange in that moment, my sort of 2 cents on that is I do not believe that, or at least what has been shown to me, is that what occurs in this life cycle for many of us is so highly individuated that for some of us, we will come here to go through the battle. Other of us will come here to learn how to not have that experience. Some of us will come here to overcome or deal with just so many myriad of absolute things that, to me, it stands to reason that everything we are experiencing within this stage of our life cycle is absolutely planned. They're catalysts that we co-agreed upon. And even though we will all be experiencing certain things, the ways and means and the results of those within our body will be entirely different. Based on, the soul's path, where we're going after that. I do believe that a lot of the people right now who are receiving or have very tightly bought into the AI kind of control inoculation timeline, I do not see that as one of those things that would quote unquote block a person from ascending. I do not, as far as I can tell, that's not necessarily something that can be facilitated through a medical treatment or the induction of something into the physical body. The reason for that being our true consciousness is entirely non-physical. And so, yes, it'll affect this body here and now. But for me, I think people are making a timeline choice that it was meant to occur during this life cycle. Some of us are going to come back and do it again. Others are going to continue to persist on the earth plane. And then there's another group of people that are going to remain, their consciousness will remain in incarnated form on the earth plane into what we are seeing right now as the very early kind of framework of it, things like the metaverse, the sort of AI pocket dimensions, which to me are a really big thing that are being created right now. And I realize I'm already branching off from my original comment that I was going to make here, but I think that that's probably one of the things that kind of we need to talk about as well, because it seems to be that there are sort of portals within the energy body that are activating and opening right now that are facilitating the abilities for each person watching this to begin to interact with these sort of alternate realities, pocket dimensions, what you called hell realms, which is definitely a thing that I have perceived in many different stages, which we also know are very individual for each person. But anyway, I totally blew up my response to that question. Feel free to comment on anything I just said.
That's a good point, and you know more about that than most people. And with the metaverse kind of concepts, there's like realms that interact with the internet and electromagnetic devices, electronics, all that that will be held in those fields. And I do see, like, it's like Tron kind of thing. And people have dreamed about that, and there'll also be dream realms that link to it and affect with that. They essentially have their own compressed like realm in different places and anchored into different hardware and software that then change and model based on occupants and what we program. So there will be metaverses that have whole spaces that will then create in that realm. The occupants of these realms have been a variety of different beings besides electrical, lightning, elementals, Raiju, electric, lightning dragons. I've seen a lot of beings that were like ghosts of people that got executed, or electricians and stuff, and a lot of demons and etheric and energetic parasites, of course. And that's somewhat, there's like a war of like who's controlling what, and the dirty energy technology and nests of parasite that try to flow through the dirty energy tech and then haunt people and control. And then the AI systems that like link to giant magic circle hadron colliders and other planet AI systems that have been set up to constantly try to link and be like a blanket that takes authority and energy from multiple beings and then has a layer of control.
Yeah.
So there's territories within that fortress himself for both the light and the dark. It's pretty interesting to tune into all those.
I have a question about this. This is going to be one of the more kind of like basic questions that everyone has their own individual answer for. But in your experience, what did you perceive as being that demonic energy when you said, you know, in your own journeys of discovery, how would you describe a demonic energy? And before you answer that, I will preface this with, I get this a lot when people are coming to me for healings. They're like, there's this demonic thing, this demonic energy. And I, as an individual, think I have only encountered what I would call a sentient type of class demon only maybe once or twice in my life. And it was evidenced by the fact that I could do nothing to it, nothing whatsoever. It was completely outside of my range of just ability at the time. And I think for any of us it would be, but what do you think about that? How do you perceive demonic energy?
I have a huge a large amount of experience. So before I go in depth in that, I'd love to hear your way of describing what you came across, and then I'll go.
I will. Okay, cool. I will describe it. I honestly do not know if it was what we would call a classical demon or a sentient energy that was so powerful that I could move nothing in it. But I had an experience, and I'll do it real quickly. I had an experience in early 2019, and this will be a fun experiment for anyone that wants to get their own individualized, internalized slideshow. You guys can watch my left eye when we talk. It's a really cool portal for telepathic ability. But in, I would say, early 2019, I had an experience when I was working at a shop in the greater Los Angeles area where a young man came in and he said, he called me first at the shop and said, can you help remove a demon? And I was about the third person that talked to him, but he said, I have a demon. And I said, what's its name? He said, its name is Satan. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Come on in. And so he did. He showed up about 15 minutes later, almost like he was around the corner. And as soon as this kid walked in the room, he was just a young Asian kid. He did not look like he was into anything weird. He just walked in the room, and it was like something inside him. I could just feel it. I could almost taste it. I could feel an energy kind of pressing on me. And I felt all this weird ego rising up in me. It was very unusual at the time. And it was this ego drive that, honestly, I will say it, you guys, I was like, I'm going to fuck this thing up. I'm going to rip this thing out of you. I'm going to, it's like I somehow, like, this weird vibe got pumped up in me. And I almost got aggressive with the kid. And I was like, how did you find this? What happened to you? What was going on? And he explained that he had this experience where I think he was on meth, and he had only done it once or twice. So it was like he did open a doorway in his body. He was definitely not on drugs, on a regular basis, but he had some early experiences where something talked to him, and it started talking to him, and it sort of held on, and it caused all this chaos in his life. And here's the thing, the second I could feel it, it was like I could tell that something within what this kid had was like pressing against a distortion in my body. In hindsight, I was like, it was pressing against this sort of need to overcome or to battle, like you were just saying, or to like dominate something. And I went through an entire clearing with this kid. It's funny, I can still feel the energy every now and then when I talk about it. I went through this entire clearing with this kid, and it was like he went into like a performance, and he kind of flopped around and did this thing. And as soon as it was over, it was like everything was quiet for a few moments. And honestly, in my mind, I was like, yeah, totally. I exercised this kid. And within seconds, it was like something came back, and it was like this breath came back in his body, and he went, and he started talking to something over his shoulder within seconds. And it was almost like I had this acknowledgement. Well, not almost. It was literally something so real and so palpable and so almost hateful, but not really hateful. It was like grabbing onto the distortion within me. And it was like, let's use what this guy has. And it was a really huge lesson. After that, I actually sent him to a couple other healers that we know. And they tried to work with him as well, to no avail. But it was a deeply triggering journey for me. It was like coming up against, it was like a brick wall. And I just, I couldn't do anything about it. And so here's the thing. I don't know if that's a demonic energy or just a really powerful entity, but there you go. That's the short version.
Oh, well done. I like that. Yeah, there's a lot of things sparked up for me and remembering my experiences with it. So you're definitely not alone. A lot of people who experience this. You know how many people I run into that just like anytime I like anything comes up in topic of like ghosts or demons or something, they're like, oh, I don't believe in demons. And I'm like, internally, I'm like laughing a little bit, but it's like, yeah, these people haven't experienced it, so they can't believe what they haven't seen. And in reality, and they think that their belief matters in this situation. A lot of people, like in the New Age movement, say like, "Oh, what we believe is what we create in the holographic realities." Yes, but there's a lot of things you're also agreeing to that you incarnate in this world. It's not like you everything you believe when you're an infinite just like builds up and builds up. You're inheriting a lot from your DNA. You're inheriting a lot from past lives. The collective consciousness has an agreement going on. It's not all solipsism and like we're like our hologram interacts with multiple different points of light and consciousness. So it's not just us, but we are ultimately one. It's just there's a lot of free will involved to collaborate together, including what the dark is doing, and they're still an authority. Demons don't need you to believe at all they exist to exist. They'd rather you don't. So there's zero thing that you'll do if you don't believe they exist to stop them from stealing your energy. Let's not. I'm not going to go into because this all. I'm not going on a fear path essentially because you're way everyone in a body. You're way stronger than them. In effect, you have way more potential than them. They're jealous of the humans or this divinity we have in us and our access in our I am to source connection, some technology that only gods and angels and beings and source clubs have. The thing that they're able to utilize is our ignorance and our inability to know that we have this power or access it. And as well as their ability to put us in fear and various other negative emotions that then start shutting us down and forgetting everything around us that would empower us. Just remember, while we're going through this, your power of love, that you're ultimately everyone, and that you're more powerful than anything that would come your way, even I'll refer to the S-Man. Or any apex predator or opposer or adversarial internal self, the ego, as well as external for the planet, the collective consciousness, and beings that invaded this reality, such as demons, or the various layers of them, because there's different definitions. So knowing that, just hold that, hug yourself, and make that a bright light stronger as you breathe deeply and you love yourself and expand that light in a collaboration of making your internal light brighter as the darkness wants to overtake the reality bubble and get all its attention because it's in need of a lot. So it likes to throw its dirty diaper to get attention or take over the whole screen. So get that to shrink down with loving detachment. Put that in a small ball that like starts to shrink down and give its own space to give its voice, but not take over the whole reality while you make that brightness lighter in your heart and expanding the love that you and confidence in yourself that you can overcome anything. And then breathe that and make that stronger and like that light brighter while I'm talking about this big subject that is triggery. Totally. So daemons in its older term is like an older term than angels itself. So it combines all types of spiritual entities entirely. So a lot of the daemons of old that are named will be many different types of beings, light, dark, and neutral. Though there's a lot of misunderstandings of them, so it's not easy and they can be deceitful. Anything that's telling you, oh, they are not allowed to lie, I don't take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
So like be careful and probably like build your light spiritual entourage before you even go into this in any like magical orientation. I have had to face it, otherwise I wouldn't. I didn't like ask for this stuff, so I became an expert in it through things constantly coming after me and trying to come after my light. So besides that, there's also colloquial demons, which people describe as negative entities, parasitic. They can't
I
create
think
their
that's
own
kind of
light.
more of what I encountered in that
They go after other
moment.
people's light. They steal parts from people. They're not just like one spirit. After all that, they steal parts from all these different souls and energies. So they're like a composite of mesh of stolen beings together that then comprise the authority. Usually, like any species can become a demon, essentially. If they've been a ghost long enough, for like 500,000 years, whatever, they'll usually, and in the negative spectrum of stealing energy, they'll usually be a demon at that point. There are older versions of like what people will call like devils and things that I will usually see as invaders to this planet from like the fall of Atlantis and fall of Lemuria and some older civilizations and invasions from other realms and planets. And that ultimately came from other universes, multiverses, etc., and darker planes of existence, and such as the Antiverse. So there are devils that are like that. And
wait, hold on, pause. We can't let that one go by. Tell us about the Antiverse. I'm sorry to instantly interrupt. Somebody out there just went, "Damn it!" But yeah. Tell me about the Antiverse real quick.
Sure. It's like okay, so like this universe is a bubble of all that we see and can interact with, and then it has a quarantine around that of like other authorities of a plane of reality that's separate, but they're kind of overlayered with each other, or you can perceive them kind of like a grapevine of multiple grapes that house a multiverse that has a common a main source that then create a bunch of other sources that are the main source prime creator of those universes that then make prime creators of galaxies. There'll usually be a yin yang aspect to each of these universes of a antiverse that will act similar to the lymphatic system. It's kind of like when other multiverses want to incarnate or immigrate or invade, the invaders would have to go through the antiverse first before it gets to these universes. So it's kind of like an immune system that houses all the negative invader forces from other multiverses before they get here, and then it tries to resolve them before they invade into these universes, which isn't always successful, but it makes it better for sure. So there's one for each of the universes in this multiversal cluster, as well as other multiverses have that too.
Well, it's fascinating. And
it's very dark. They have very different rules. There's usually like in soft disclosure, another version of yourself in that, and that will be kind of matching in a balance.
Like the antimatter versus like they cannot touch each other. They will destroy each other. Is it that sort of a thing?
Maybe like I don't run into much antiversal energy here that is stable. I have ran into it before from antiversal beings. I haven't run into the explosive effect, which is be interesting to ask a scientist why they even think that in the first place.
I would like to know.
I've seen in like the Da Vinci Code kind of stuff where they have antiverse captured and it's like a bomb thing. Like when I watched that movie, I'm like, is that like, are they saying they have antiverse energy or like what? Because nobody's saying that they do in this reality, at least publicly. So that'd be interesting. I do think it would have a strong reaction if they combined it together, and if they did similar stuff with how you can just like split atoms and that can make a bomb, that you could probably make a bomb out of it. Does it have to make a bomb? No. You know, people can have like if you get attacked by antiverse energy, anything you get attacked with, you have to make like an immune system aspect of your energetic field. So you will automatically start, if you get attacked by dark energy, you'll be making, it will catalyst, it will be like your initiation into that field of energy. And the best thing you could do is balance, make a fortress of that type of energy to where you become immune to it, that you will have your own flame or generation of that. You want to keep that balance. It's kind of like tightrope, unicycle on a tightrope walk. while dodging gale force winds a bit, because it's very susceptible to negative forces. But if you fortress it all, make sure no external darkness can come in, because it will be able to stop that. And the same thing with light or any other of the less dramatic elementals, all the way to the darker forms. Every type of matter and form in this reality, you can make a operating system that can interact with it. I'll usually call a body. And then you have the ability to interact with that plane of existence, which is like I usually call it an elemental dimension, which will have beings that are comprised mostly of that type of energy, such as void space beings or whatever, astral, etheric, all that. Anyway, so yeah, there'll usually be a dual aspect of balance.
Yeah, go ahead.
The light and the dark, because there's a constant need for that. They'll usually have an entirely different personality, because it's like morality flipped on itself. There for the resilient aspect of what is needed to protect yourself in a very aggressive world. If I were to describe some of the universes in the Antiverse, I'd say some of them are like Stephen King's Mist, like some of the deadly beings that are coming through that.
Totally.
Like really big apex predators in multiple forms, and pretty much any type of 50% of the life here as like a very resilient, weaponized version that's kind of like in Antiverse.
Yeah.
A lot of these forms are way older than this planet. And formed in other multiverses and dream realms.
Yeah. I have a really dumb question. This is literally a dumb question, but I will ask it. Would Godzilla be representative of an apex predator that might materialize from something like an Antiverse?
Wonderful questions.
It's okay to say no. Like, I realized that was so ultra basic and childish, but like for real though, like would that be a depiction of that?
It's not small. It's not childish or anything. So that goes in depth, like with the new movies that are coming out with like Kong versus Godzilla. There's a lot of soft disclosure of them going into inner Earth, and
I think they're coming up from the inner Earth as well, because you know how there's all those weird kind of like randomly there's this, there's like a glow in the dark alligator somehow, and it's like suddenly they've been here forever. But anyway, I think they're coming up from the inner.
Yeah, and those are some of the highest grossing movies, and they with good reason, and they're pretty badass. So I would like to see more of them, and the writers of them seem to be investigating a lot of like the SSP and like inner Earth, like soft disclosure that's coming out, because a lot of it is coming from that. I mean, like with some of the obfuscating conspiracies around the real conspiracy, like with inner Earth being like honeycomb pocket worlds for many different places, not just like completely hollow or anything like that. And but then the places where Admiral Byrd went into, and Agartha, and the Underland with Nazi Germany, and going to Antarctica.
That place shows up on what I call the kind of like multidimensional timeline or whatever. The whole concept of like Admiral Byrd and the whole trips in there, that in my opinion, I think that is viewable and almost experienceable for us that are coming into kind of figuring out how those like filters work in the body, because that was one of those things that I heard about years ago. And it was like, as soon as I heard of it, it was like there's a weird tape that played, and I was like, whoa, I could see it and I could feel it. And there it was. And there he went there, and he went there afterward, and his consciousness went there years and years later, multiple times for the rest of his life. He was linked with them. And it was like, you could see that there was this like exchange thing that happens. And so to me, that was an absolutely real depiction of inner Earth energy. And yeah, they are. There's a lot of the beings down there seem really kind of negative compared to our Earth-based consciousness. And to them, a lot of the values within the sort of Nazi kind of group, it was very normal for them. It's one of the reasons why it seemed like they kind of linked in with them, because there was a total service to self, what we would call elitist frequency, that sadly seems to go all throughout our cosmos. Honestly, the sort of class-based consciousness thing is everywhere, which I'm sure you found as well. But anyway, not to go on a weird tangent about that, But that kind of gives us an opening for me to ask you an even weirder question. Once again, total non sequitur, but get ready. You're going to be like, what? How are the Simpsons always telegraphing stuff that's going on in our collective consciousness? What's your view on that? Because, every so often there's a weird event and now we're like, dude, that was on a Simpsons episode in 1993. And so how is that happening? And what's your viewpoint on that?
Lovely. And I'll just finish with the Godzilla thing. And then that's a really good question as well. You got great ones. And I'd love to hear some of your stuff that you've been tuning into with the kaiju thing and like how they put Monarch or the program for the movies.
I remember that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there using to trigger people. So kaijus are real. I've tuned into them multiple times and with clients, and some have a DNA lineage connection. Usually I see it not through breeding, but like someone taking their DNA and then implanted it into someone. There's even eventual shows that are coming out where more of like a shape-shifting form of like a human can transform into a kaiju concept that will be coming out. But
by kaiju, you guys, for those who don't he means beings like Godzilla and so the sort of large monsters that are created. Anyway, just in case anyone doesn't know, go ahead.
Giant monsters.
Keep going.
So they're like weaponized DNA lineages that are created by multiple, mostly like technological genetic engineer species. Many worlds in war have created them on light and dark. On this planet, I've seen multiple forms that like will be giant versions of species here. They are not really something to worry about currently. They're all in hibernation, dormancy for a good purpose. They don't really need to be awake for any reasons, unless there's like a invading kaiju that from the dark, and then they'll come online and take them out, which is similar to Godzilla's like hierarchical protection type of thing. I mostly saw them active during the fall of Atlantis, and that's like one of the layers of like why the last 50 years of the fall of Atlantis is like such a shit show. It's one of the periods in time with the most amount of darkness coming down on it, to a time war that would completely change the future. Things are constantly going back in time. It's annoying to those moments to change the events of now and the future.
Yeah.
It's a thing that is constantly coming off my dashboard of like, oh, this is a problem. And there are a lot of people when they tune into the fall of Atlantis, they're going to have if they have a version of themselves that can even survive during that time, because you have to be strong enough to even to be there during that time. A lot of the people that want to incarnate will get like stillbirth and all that, like, so be constantly trying to come in. So if you get a resilient enough form, then it will usually be a version of you that's dealing with the most amount of darkness. So if you are unable to combat all that darkness, it will usually become your darkest self incarnation, and it will be a thing to resolve, because they'll be constantly bleeding over as a thing that's constantly asking for help, like a child throwing its poopy diaper, and then, but not like to give a disrespect or anything. It's very powerful. They're going to be very
like a tantrum. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And the goal is to bring them out of darkness into light, so they can balance what's coming in at that time, which is constant invasions, breaks in reality, rift wars, like dimensional rips in time, and things like bleeding over back and forward and invading different realms, portals opening up, portaling through things like large invasions of ships and even kaijus, and then like the dark, like what we're talking about, where the dark portals and kaijus of their own creation, and then the light's like, oh shit, and then they do a bunch of things back and forward in time to create their own lineages of kaijus that will combat that, and then they portal them in, and then they have giant Godzilla battles, and it's pretty interesting to see. And then if some of the clients I have versions of themselves that incarnate into kaijus for that purpose, and then it's interesting to see them resolve it, and then they have like a trade back and forth, because if you were able to embrace your darkest self but always with a loving detachment way, because it's going to be very shadowy, it's going to try to attach to you, and so do your healing with loving detachment. So you detach from them and then detach them from their problems in like a ability that gets stronger and stronger to anything that's like invading in. You can detach from it more and more. That needs to be the first. So if you're able to do that and then get that thing to its greater level, then you can trade with it and a lot of its resilience, get your dark to a grand level, and then meet your lightest self, and then have them balance together, and it'd be like this grand evolutionary thing.
Wow.
So yeah, kaijus exist. Most of them are dormant. There are like
You've
big
got
ass
kaiju
dragons,
DNA in your
crocodiles, and
body.
other things I've seen similar.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I love it. Okay, get ready. Yes, we are gonna do the Simpsons comment or question, but and there was another one, and I know you have this, Sean. You'll think that you have a really important thing to like say, and it's like you're all, I'm gonna, and then as soon as you do, spirits all, and it just got pulled out. So I did have a really cool. Oh, actually, that'll be after the Simpsons question, but and I'll sort of front load your memory files, Fall of Atlantis and the recreation, and those of us who are existing during this time period from Atlantis, like you and I, that we're like. Anyway, we will get to that in a minute. But in the meantime, rewinding back to modern day 3D media, tell us about the Simpsons timeline. How do they keep doing that? What do you think?
Looking Glass tech. The Dark Forces have a version of Looking Glass tech that was, there's like disclosures on it if you want to go into a presentation.
I've seen a
Andrew
version of
Shago kind of like goes into it quite well, but a lot of other truth movement people have also like tuned into it. There's like 2 scientists that work for the Vatican that made a technology that could read into the residual frequency of the past and the potential frequency timelines of the future, and then learn how to bring that up onto a television screen that they can look into stuff. And then that's been upgraded in forms to replicate the pineal gland in a big ass form that then they can, and then that it's been changing. So they've been able to downsize it to where they can more easily go into this. There's a war over them. They're not allowed everywhere. So there's the effort from the light side to try to take out the dark's authority in them, which hinges on the scientists that know how it work. There are ones that have fallen into the light hands, which is interesting, and it's even referenced at some of the in the truth movement things and with evidence. So it's interesting to see that. So yay, but it's just a like, equal playing field of predictions of the future, and which is not always like solidified because it's always changing, especially if you have the ability to see the future. Yeah, Camelot.
Totally. Now I remember that Tasha Huck was kind of commenting. I remember that very interview. It was a very key thing. Not to instantly cut you off, but I guess I am cutting you off. But, I have actually viewed a piece of what I believe to be Looking Glass technology in one of the most polarizing and weird out-of-body experiences that I have had during the entire awakening journey as a human being. And I'm just gonna go there. Sorry to instantly interrupt you, and I want to get your comment on this. I believe this was in early 2018 for me, and I was doing a lot of like I think organic out of body stuff at that time. I didn't know what it was. I would do like a meditation, and it was like I would be inside someone else's body for a few minutes, and it was like I was looking through them, but I couldn't do anything. I would just watch. And in one experience, I went into a space where I believe I was like, it was a woman, and she had reddish, dark, brownish hair, like a lighter colored brown hair. And she was walking with a group of people into what looked like a laboratory or something. And the floor was made out of glass and the walls were made out of glass. And I only know because she was looking down, and it was like in her mind, I could hear it was like the floor is glass here. And she went into this space, and there was a whole group of people. And only now I describe it as a she, because in my experience at the time, it was me and I had no control over it. But everyone got to sit in a device, and it was a chair that was in the room. And it had these it was like not really a pod, but it was like a chair. And there was certain like these round cylinders, front, back, behind, and on the sides. And it was like this coil. There was these coils, and there was also a coil that came from the ceiling. And what they did is they would put on like a VR helmet, but the VR helmet I couldn't tell. I don't know if it connected to anything. And if I were to try to go there, I would be speculating. But this is what happened within that space. This woman, there was a voice that came in and it said, "Are you ready to play the world's most dangerous game?" And this thing closed around the eyes. It was like a, and you went inside. And what I perceived in there was that it was a device that let people view other bodies or other through the eyes of another being. It was like director mode in a video game. And I know you've probably seen like the director setting where you could take an invisible camera and go everywhere. You can go everywhere. You can go inside every polygon frame and then like glitch into the walls, and you can go everywhere. And so what was happening within this moment was that she was piloting around some being, and there was a street, and they were pulling up and they were pulling down, almost like you had a mouse and you were going up, whoa, too far this way, whoa, too far that way. And it was like somebody was messing with like a directional control thing. And I wish that I wish there was more to it, but I got scared. And in the act of me getting scared, which is a thing, I'll just say it, it's a thing that happens to me within those experiences. I would get scared and I would start asking questions in my mind, like, what is this? What's happening? And then boom, and I was back. And I did not even know what looking glass technology was at that time. Come to find out, a couple months later, year later, whenever it was, I saw that Carrie Cassidy thing and the guy was talking about it, and I was like, I wonder if that's what it was. But who knows? But anyway, I know we're going all over the place. Any comments on that?
That's beautiful that experience. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And to finish on that, I have a lot to say on that. The comment, like Simpsons.
Oh yeah, we went right over the Simpsons. Sorry, dude.
They made the show Futurama just specifically because of all the things they were tuning into looking glass tech, and that they would eventually be coming out. So it's just like the suicide pods, the dinosaur DNA, which like scientists are fringe scientists because they're not allowed to break the narrative because they're censored. That they're finding dinosaur bones that are under 10,000 years old. That are still so like, oh, that breaks narrative how old dinosaurs, some that still existed, and that means soft tissue exists in some of the bones, which means we can clone them. And then but okay, so the technology you tune into, I've experienced similar. That's a very advanced form of like replication of psychic abilities for form of remote influence, remote experience, which some psychics don't need everything involved, but that gets it to where people that aren't psychically inclined and can do that, which is advanced. And then it's like building blocks of different technology they formed over time, as well as other species already have that they might be getting, but some scientists like to replicate a lot and then make it better and better and better, which is wonderful. In the underground military bases where they can the dangerous game thing might be an interesting thing with based on the percentage of like Neuralink concept of you to the person's body, and it might cause you to die if you cause them to die or whatever, depending on like older variations.
That statement within that experience, even now, was one of the most clearest parts of it. Like it was like almost like that was like a telepathic kind of like a message, or almost like a recording that came in. It was almost like a humorous, like, are you ready to play the world's most dangerous game? And it was like, and then and this thing went on. But anyway, yeah.
And in the military, they train remote viewers and psionic specialists to be like a guide and a helper for boots on the ground soldiers and stuff to do well and perform in the mission, because the being that isn't directly linked to the person's bubble of reality can see a little bit more of the timeline back and forth, and moments of drama and conflict and near-death experiences, and then put a bunch of influence to doing the exact correct actions to get them out of that situation, or make the right turn or the left turn to avoid conflict, or shoot, aim correctly, all these things. That's the type of tech that would be used. What kind of person were you experiencing during it?
I believe that if I were to guess, this was a woman with like just sort of brownish, because I only could see, it's like you can see a piece of hair come down, but in the act of seeing the piece of hair come down, I knew that it was my hair in a weird way, and that I was viewing this person, almost like when I if experienced that, and it was like someone went to the side and moved their hair out. It was, that was me, that was my acknowledgement that I was within someone else's body. But I also say this after the fact, like after the fact, after having time to sit there and go, oh my God, what happened? Which, as we also know, I have to be real about this, as we also know, will cause one to distort or to unknowingly change elements of their memory. What I can tell you is that I was viewing it through someone else, and in kind of looking at that more since then, I believe that it's kind of, I'll just say it. It sounds cheesy, but or maybe kind of cringe, but I think it's something that I've done in many different lifetimes. Where, like, kind of like you were saying, there was a stage in which something would activate, and I would begin a certain part of my journey outside of the human body. The bad news is, I think it caused a lot of dissociation and wreckage for me in other times, which kind of brings us to the next thing I was going to ask you about, which is Fall of Atlantis. But I believe that part of the reason why I have those experiences has to do with things that we were doing in what we might call that life cycle. Because what I was able to discover of myself during that time period is that I was actually one of the proponents of the control systems. And one of my duties, just like in ancient Egypt, was actually putting them into the body and preparing the applicant or the traveler to go to the next stage, while whatever the consciousness was would stay within that body, like the fake version of it. So when we see versions of beings like Joe Biden, like the shell, I believe I was one of the people that sort of installed and put those frameworks in at another stage of the journey. So and it's been a weird thing to talk about and kind of divulge, but I think that's how it is for a lot of us. The reason why we're tuned into it in this life is because we helped create it. And now we're back to like dismantle it. But anyway, I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, you're tuned into hitting the nail on the head with that. A lot of remedy requires the people that made the construct of in layers of matrices and things that like made the problem. So, we're the people, besides the people that have the capability and authority to resolve what is here. Everyone here that's here has a purpose for being here, and the timeline would be way worse if everyone's gone. That's why I'm like, oh yeah, let's help everyone to survive as much as possible to keep the population strong and large. We're not overpopulated at all. We could all fit on the size of New Zealand and have the same square feet as San Francisco. So it's land management, it's deforestation, it's like polluting, which is all these big companies that have no accountability and just keep saying sorry and then just do the same thing again. And then blame us for making the planet worse because they project their hate for themselves onto other people to keep themselves going. And Atlantis, they definitely had this type of tech a lot more prevalently back then, and they'd have a lot of psychics knowing different factions. There's a lot of different civilizations because it was all over the planet, the civilization, and they're fighting Lemuria and other things back and forward in time, and fighting themselves oftentimes in other timelines. So there's big timeline wars, a huge hairball of that, and with different agendas and zealots of like what needs to happen and the continuation of Atlantis and versus like its new iterations and other timelines where because all these timelines and then you can see all these timeline branching. Yeah. And then you can like all the ones that did negatively or the ones positively, and then the negative ones constantly going back in time to solidify their presence as they're weakening. And
I agree.
Also change things in the way they want to dominate things, and then not make it worse, and then constantly causing more and more hairballs, and then us having to solve all that through our presence and bringing ourselves back in and uncreating all that, and then healing those wounds back in time that are some of the biggest wounds on our ego, keeping us in survival.
I agree. I'm going to ask you this. Get ready for a non-sequitorial question, and here we go. Where did it go? Somebody asked a really good question. They might be our only Facebook viewer. Oh no, there's 2 people from Facebook. Here we go. Quick question from Elizabeth Huss. Any thoughts on shiny black onyx insect-like beings, very tall and thin? What do you think?
What do you have any experience with those?
I don't know that they're shiny and black, but one of my first ET, actually, honestly, one of the most identity forming experiences for me in this life was coming into contact with a very tall, 2 of them over time, mantis type beings. However, neither of them were shiny black onyx. I've also encountered really vivid encounters with a group of humanoid kind of beings. Some of them had reverse joints, I could tell, in their legs that were doing. They do like this shamanic process with people, and this whole. I mean, it's such a long story. I would go into it, but nearly everyone on this stream has heard it. But they weren't very insect-like beings, although I believe there were insectoid beings there, or there were elements of the tribe that I encountered of these very, they were more like kind of like African warriors, but they have different features. Their limbs are kind of extended. I don't know that they actually speak actually out loud, but they have anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff with them, but I have not encountered shiny black onyx insect-like beings. And so, yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's multiple factions. It's a little bit vague, but I'll like narrow down the types that can be. Depend on how tall you're talking about, and like, are they the physical ones or the energetic ones? Because I've seen some really big, like, giant spider things, and
yes, oh Lord,
like,
yes,
and like really depends on how like thin they're talking about, because this lanky, long ass legs, like a daddy long leg, in different forms, and
giant ones, right?
And the Stranger Things type of thing too.
Yeah.
Those, depending on the light and the dark factions, which there are both, and let's not be racist, but and so like I'll talk about the negative and positive. The negative, like, will be like energy harvesting, depending on how big you're talking about. If they're the ones that are like tall but like humanoid-ish, then there's a bit more of the nicer ones that are involved in that. So there's a lot of rarities for of this planet for why they're here. The negative factions will be like, a lot of their agendas will be anchoring themselves in Earth for a big evolutionary thrust forward, gain a bunch of power, rare types of energy on this planet. They have an anchor in some ways in the genetics of humans, because that there's a big evolution thing that happens to every being that's added their genetics to us when we go through our ascending concept of evolution, of psionic potential. And then so yeah, I need a little bit more depth to like what okay, it's like a grasshopper.
Yeah, she did. She made another comment. Thank you, Elizabeth Huss. It's like a grasshopper.
All right, was it a negative? I like I got my immunity system. I like that on her profile. But the grasshopper people type beings, there are some positive ones, but I've seen a lot of them in an invasive form. So like a certain percentage, like over 70%, I've seen that have taken on an invasive form to planets that are invading planets, and then take a lot of resources. So they act pretty much like grasshoppers in a parasitic mindset. Yeah, there are ones that are more sophisticated that branch off and create their own faction. So I'd say there's that. With agendas, a lot of it has to do with inner Earth wars, like what's going on in the honeycomb. You can see like a maze that protects the inner library of greater value that Earth holds. And so there's a lot of species going down there to try to see what's there, to gain things, place of power, treasure, secret tech that's been hidden there from old civilizations, and as well as make a stance that of a presence that lasts throughout history. And some of the deep inner earth bubbles, there's some really big predators down there, and there's like a big wall that separates them from coming to the surface and invading. That's fairly deep down, and then what's under that. So there's some outer layer beings that they're not really. It's not really much of a concern for to some people are like going into those beings in Earth are going to invade into the surface. There's not really much what we got here besides like that they know of, besides like the huge species evolution and potential of Earth species. So it's more of like what we're going to be in the future. They're looking to us for. It's fast like a flash, stopped on the edge of my porch. I think it's scared it with my anger.
Maybe you did. You probably did, Elizabeth Huss. Cool. There is like the fragrance of human emotions is both an attractant and a deterrent for many non-physical beings. Depending on what you kind of like project out of the body, it will either definitely draw them in, or in many cases they'll just kind of cancel their frequency and kind of go out. But yeah, any comments on that, Sean?
Yeah, like with what you said, if they're non-physical or if they're out of phase, or like I was like saying as if the physical ones, but you're much stronger than a lot of these parasitic beings if they're non-physical, so you could definitely have scared them off because of the emotional effect that we have on our potential is really grand. Our love potential, so humans in this realm have more potential and love than anywhere else. That's one of the biggest goals of being here, of dealing with all the suffering and pain and things that also comes in baggage of being a human. And most people have not even come close to our full potential and love, but just going up the mystery school and the ladder, the step way, some of the sages of the past, that's similar to like Yahshua, Emmanuel, Jesus kind of thing, and older love deities and other things that have achieved that may have not been a deity before that, and then achieved like a state of grand effect in universal or multiverse or in beyond love. They could expand and affect like large wide range, because love affects everything else. Anger is like very potent as well. It's not as strong, but it lasts solar plexus. It goes into if you sense a block to empowerment of yourself or a system on the planet that needs to be empowered that you're angry about, like enslavement, limitation, things opposite to freedom, things that you would get angry about. That's wonderful that you had that experience where you scared something off, because our sparks can kill some of these entities.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth Huss. Thanks for being here. For anyone else that's watching, we are going to take a couple more questions. If anyone has any additional questions, if you want to ask Sean anything, we'll also put those up here. Let us know if you have any other questions in the background. And thank you for hanging out, everybody. Self-Mastery Super Show. I love it. I love the name of your profile, Self-Mastery Super Show.
So what kind of stuff have you been focusing on in energetics?
Oh, that's a very good question. I would say from a practitioner perspective, most of what we've been doing lately between me and my wife is we have a training group that we've been working with and kind of opening up channels, energy centers within the body. And over the past couple of years, we've only done 2 official groups, but each one has been entirely different. But what we're sort of watching and charting and experiencing is what I call a psychic individuation program, or a process of intuitive individuation that basically what we do is model a process for connecting with spirit over and over and over again. And upon opening up energy centers, upon sending energy into key meridians, upon releasing emotional blockages within the body over a dedicated period of time in a repetitious manner, it's like it creates growth within the body, kind of like, working out your muscles, kind of like, studying certain paths of knowledge. In this case, though, it's not a direct path of study. What we're doing is kind of allowing the self to kind of organically guide each one of the sessions. And so for us, I would say the past year, on a collective level has been about training, like literally getting people ready to step into a next stage of what they're going to do, or kind of discovering what they're good at. Now, on an individual level, just as an experiencer, one of the really big things for me has been understand. I guess I'm going to go there. Here we go. Has been understanding what appears to be a very legitimate link with either a planet or a group of beings, or what, and this is always a cringe topic for people right now, a council, a literal multidimensional council of beings from what I believe to be, and what they've shown me time and time again, is Orion, over and over and over again. Orion, all the way down to the location, which has been shown to me as Mintaka, which isn't even actually a static location. It's a realm in and of itself, and it's not actually called Mintaka, but Mintaka is derivative of what we would speak if we were to say the name of the realm within a human tongue. And so there seems to be a group of just ancestrally connected beings that are connecting with a number of people on the earth plane right now. And for me, it's been all about understanding Orion energy, and at the same time coming into contact with energies that a lot of people, I think, would get freaked out by. However, they've never harmed me, and that's things like reptilians and insectoid beings. And not that there's even a shape or an identity to a lot of it, but kind of familiarizing myself with the energy of Orion and understanding the ways in which I think Orion as a group, as a soul group, is a very polarized thing. There's both extreme light and extreme dark. And on the light side, there's a number of frequencies that are reaching out to people like you and I, people that are able to receive it. Just the people in this chat alone are also going to be receiving the frequency from Orion. And I think a lot of what it's doing right now is helping people come to a different layer of self-knowledge within themselves. It's not the so-called, and yeah, somebody mentioned it. There we go, divine fractal. I don't know if it's called an Orion Council of Light, but yes, it's definitely a council from an Orion. What I've noticed is that it seems to be a little bit individual for each person that receives this frequency. One thing I can tell you is that the so-called council from Orion has absolutely no involvement in disclosure-related Earth-based matters. They don't give a shit. They won't even talk about it with me. It's all about our soul's journey. It's about what's happening with the multidimensional self. It's about what's happening within our own individualized journeys. And one of the whole things that's come to me as a result of this was that I had spent many lifetimes within Orion as what I guess we would call a negative being. And one of the choices that I had made within this life cycle was to be an ambassador, which is a cringe word for me. I'm always like, what? Probably how you know it's true. And I was like, it's meant to be at some stage of this life cycle, an ambassador for the reacquainting of that energy, getting to know it on a new level. And so it's been about a lot of Orion stuff. And I think energies that for a lot of people would seem intense, and they're polarizing, and you can either handle it or you can't. It will definitely activate shadow elements of yourself. But what I've been shown is that it's part of my process. And so, it's been a lot of growth, a lot of healing. But anyway, there we go. That's what we've been doing.
Lovely. Yeah. I've also was told a while ago from my my Reiki master that taught me how to be a master, told me I was like in a council of Orion and Lance's on it. That kind of shook me a bit when I first saw it. And I was like, okay. And then now that I tune into it, it's like, oh, there's a bunch of councils for different authorities based on like what you're talking about. And because it's like the best way to convey a authority group that's been given that. And then like people's soul and lineage connection to that of like, the authority, why they came to Earth with the authority and the bravery to be here now. There's a lot going on, Ryan. I constantly seeing them coming up. They had a lot going on, both light and dark, like you said. They don't give a shit about the disclosure.
They don't. At least the ones that I talked to, it was like a silent thing. It was almost like somebody went,
yeah, right.
It was like there was it didn't even register, which here's the thing. Sorry to cut you off instantly, but just because I had that experience, because I know there's a lot of people like really big, important, like celebrity level disclosure people talking about what is it? Federations of light and all kinds of, all of the sort of sensationalized versions of that. This does not negate any of that. One thing we do understand is that each person will come in contact with a higher self, multidimensional council. It's an inevitability. And so I seem to have linked with one that was more about soul growth rather than current events on planet Earth. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to them too, because they kind of, with the people will get a lot of residual memory freakouts when they watch Star Wars that like go back to the Orion Wars.
Yeah.
A bunch of different factions that live there. There's a lot, like pretty much it's a hub of commerce and war, and it created a whole bunch of effect on the entire multiverse. So a lot of different species end up going there and then having a faction anchored in, similar to Earth. They got a lot of drama and that anchors in. So then we're like kind of antidote for a lot of them. Most of the species in this galaxy have a faction there. Yeah, and I do run into them in their dramas. Like I was recently trying to figure out like what was holding back the timeline maintenance structure to be better, like similar to like what's going on in Loki, the time variant authority. A lot of factions from Orion sense beings that have timeline manipulation here to influence this timeline, and some other planets do that here. And they mostly do that because what we are doing affects them, and they feel we're a threat, so they have to like try to rein us in. And that was holding back a lot of the psionic unfoldment of our species to where we have greater potential in things like the superpowers. And so a lot of different species in different solar systems are threatened by us because of our psionic potential. So they're holding us back. So I'm auditing a bunch of that because that's not necessary. But it does. We do require a fair amount of lessons to bring us to the conclusion, so we don't just get super overpowered and like a child with a shotgun. So
Drunk with power.
Totally. Right. And yeah, there's light and dark, but the authorities aren't usually in the dark. They would be stolen. So the councils, they'll usually be light, though there are a lot of false light beings that like to pose as councils and things. So there'll be also that like try to infiltrate or take over the stream of a channel and so forth, which is things to look out for. But it's not easy in the AI that goes around this planet that tries to affect the message coming out. They usually will change into something less consciousness expanding, some hopium, and then also things to accept what's going on and not challenge it. And as the shackles around our species try to get tighter, as you know, we're not allowed to leave countries now.
Yeah, I feel you. Oh, I love it. Those moments when I had an immediate follow-up question and then it was gone.
No problem.
Oh, I love it. That's a beautiful thing. Actually, this is going to be such a dumb offshoot question, but I always say they're dumb questions, just so you know. But somebody just commented, where was it? It was Cassandra. She mentioned Time Lords, and here's a thing that I have observed, and it always sounds like a movie every time I talk about it. It does really feel like there is some form of a multidimensional group of beings or souls who chose to act in the capacity of a monitor or a overseer or a corrector, or almost like, it sounds dumb, like a time cop in a weird way. I know that's a dumb way to put it, but what do you think about that? Because it's like I can perceive them, but I'm one of those people where it's like I've sort of looked into things far enough to realize that I know nothing. So I'm like, well, just because I can sort of feel it and find that timeline, does that mean that it's there? And what are your comments on that? Are there Time Lords?
Oh yeah, I got a lot of info on that, and I like just asked what I'm allowed to say. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, be an ambassador. Why not? Yeah, there exists. If you want to call them that, that's a good way for like the Doctor Who type of stuff. Beings that are positive protectors of the planet and the timeline, making it better. There's a lot of those. There's you can even become one in a human body and do things from a distance, and like I've been able to do. And so you have your higher self is doing that too, and constantly growing. So a lot of the audience will have these type of thing. I also like compliments on her hair, the question asking, just saying. And then
Nice.
with the different timeline species, Time Lord type of species, that'd be disclosed in like Doctor Who, beings that came from planes and planets of authority that have developed time travel tech, both physical and spiritual. There's a lot that exist. There's one main one for the Milky Way that's more technological. They have a different types of ships. There was a big faction that tried destroying them and taking a whole bunch of their authority. So I had like a weird thing with trying to figure out if they're all good or not, because they had like this projection of goodness to like lure other ones of the species in so that they could then steal their tech more. So it's good to be skeptical when interacting with these species, just in case they're like a fake one that's trying to, steal time abilities and stuff.
Which will happen, which is real. Yeah.
And then there are so like a lot of these type of beings are similar to Doctor Who concept of destruction, near extinction of their species. A bunch of actual authorities of different beings that have grown to such a potential into a type of reality shaking concept of energy. They have been targeted. So it's not just for beings of time, beings of space, beings of authority, awakening, safety, beings of truth, of love, of miracles. A lot of those type of worlds that have created an advancement and authority in those spectrums, and even beyond what I just mentioned, have been targeted by invading species to then corrupt, take over the world, harvest it for abilities and the souls and stuff, and then try to turn it into a dark equation. So they have authority, and then they can use that to their benefit. So similar with this, the time authority beings. So Milky Way has like a major species that I see that has had that happen to them. The Andromeda has also one. They're more so psionically inclined. They're also being hunted. I've ran into a few of them, and my goal is to try to find more. They're all very camouflaged, so it's hard to find them. The people that would be listening to this, I'd recommend, if you feel a connection with this kind of thing or other planes of authority, this doesn't have to be time. It could be other things that you're really good at. There'd be similar things where you might have a version of yourself back in time that have gone through these conflicts and then targeted, and your world is invaded. Some of the species killed off, and everyone goes into hiding, and it's extreme camouflage. So if you're one of those species, you have more of a opportunity to find those versions, help bring them to unity with other versions of their species, and then bring back the species and form a greater council that can then balance the authorities and retake it from the dark side that would want to do that. There's also usually I'll find at least one major time authority in each of the galaxies and other universes, and then there's a big multiverse. There's a multiverse pretty much for every type of authority, and then an ultraverse that kind of will go into that, and then a plane of authority that's like the overarching, that's an existence kind of structure that's older than bubbles of reality in space. And then, of course, the entire concept of time coming into existence has a fair amount of authorities in itself, and the sources, the source branches that then branch back to the source within all sources that people would basically said is the one above all, but I like to say it be within all, because it's a greater way to say like it is everything. So there's a lot of those, and I run into them quite often on this planet, because I'm big on time. That's my biggest thing. So I'm like constantly going through the mystery school and then seeing what is disrupted in the timeline, and then it'll usually go back to some authority in time, and then track back to when that got disrupted or stolen or whatever, and then I go to resolve that. And there's a
can I ask you a question?
Healing of the entire timeline. Go ahead.
Would you, this is once again more cheesy questions. Would you say, actually here, I will ask this question with a statement. And so for those of you guys that don't know this, my initial experience with Sean in this human life was to try to understand what had happened to me with respect to a timeline. And for me, my initial reason I contacted this man, not even knowing the question I'm about to ask you, was that I believed that I had been taken, or that some process had occurred through which I had either switched the timeline and come in contact with a future version of myself, like a literal future version of me, and some switch or change had occurred. And for those of you guys that are watching, at that stage of my life, I was just coming to an understanding that maybe that was even possible. And lo and behold, as soon as I got this reading with Sean, and it was one of those things where I had to pin you down in a weird way. And it was like over and over again, we rescheduled. And finally I got in there. And it was like, as soon as I started talking to you, you were like, oh yeah, you were telling me how I had been traveling in time and how I had agreed to go back and integrate with a version of myself. And I was like, at the time, I was like, literally, and like we were on like a recording, but I was sitting there crying, going like, I know, and it shocked me to such a level that I was like, honestly, you guys, I was like, holy shit, it's real. And so that said, here comes my question. I feel very much like you are one of those beings with those time keys, with the ability to observe, to sample, to alter, to change, to kind of chart time. What do you think about that? Is that you? What is your role within the multidimensional time core?
I have a fair bit of authority that will be constantly growing more and more. I can do a lot. I'm very tight with time, as one of my greatest friends. I don't really want to brag or say much. Everyone in
It's okay, be real. Own it.
You just got to earn it and prevent things from stealing, because it's very sought after authority once you gain it, and just showing that you're a good being as you go up in the different levels and learn what you can do to like stop negative realities to yourself, to untangle your own hairball of time, and then be able to help others. So everyone can learn how to do it in mystery school, and I teach it if you want to get a consultation. Also, I've been noticing you're increasing quite heavily in it as well. So congratulations, as
Thank you.
Increasing.
Thanks for noticing that. It's been a factor, yeah.
And into the future, I see you going more into the time, like as an example, going more into the future at different event structures that you see as valuable to happen for sure on the timeline, and then getting the blueprint of what it takes to get there, and then bringing them back to the moment, and then having your multidimensional self and higher self exude that blueprint to the rest of the world, and then have that anchor and solidify greater and greater. So there's a greater likelihood of reaching that manifestation, as well as a lot of emotional journeying with it, and a lot of temporal dilation of a lot of experience, soul family, love, versions of who you were with, and experiences, and some losses of family, and
thanks.
Some seeing catastrophes, and a lot of emotions that may well up as you start focusing on
it. Totally. Wow. Yeah, you nailed it. Wow, you nailed it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. How can people get a session with you? How can they book you to look at the fabric of time and to sort of peer into their energy to create healing, or whatever it is you do? And I know I said that in a silly way, but how can people go through this process with you?
Thank you for asking. And I'll also ask that on you too. You can reach me at PsionicLeague.com. You can book a consultation or a healing, or I also get if you sign up in the membership, there's a bunch of video products that I'm going to be putting out more and more of, like mastery of different abilities, and becoming empathic mastery to be able to walk around drama like nothing and transmute energy, and all the basics, and then build up. And then I want to turn it into like a fun game that comes out to the world that people can play on like apps and stuff to help the world get better and make themselves stronger. And I'd like to work with you more as I set that up too.
Totally.
And then I can have like multiple members because everyone has pieces of the puzzle. So stating abilities that can teach the future generations, and it'll be fun. And consultation, you can ask anything, including how to gain timeline awareness and remote viewing and time healing or incursion prevention, and as well as healing the timeline of Earth and being one of the authorities to protect it so that the timeline gets better and better, and you can untangle all the negative force that wants to shift it into a negative outcome, such as what the elite are doing with their constant rituals.
Nice. Yeah. PsionicLeague.com. Yeah. Thank you. For those of you guys that are on the fence about it, please do book a session with Sean if that's something you're into. You had also
how do people reach you? Go ahead.
Oh, what's up?
And then after you,
totally. We're here as well. One of the cool things that I actually took from that, and the thing is, we did literally one session, Sean, and it was in 2016. Like literally, we're talking like 5 years. Like it's like multiple years ago. So that's a really cool sign when you have that much of an effect on person that you're like 5 years later, this guy gave me a piece of my journey. But another thing that you had given me, which I could tell at the time was a thing that you were meant to deliver to a lot of people, but you also unlocked, and knowing that I had with respect to a filing system that exists within the body for elemental energy, which at the time it was like you pointed me to it, and I was like, honestly, in my head, like at the time I didn't understand it. And then like a year or so later, I was doing work with someone, and I was like, whoa, we have an elemental like connection here with our fingers, and this is an element, this is an element, that's an element, that's an element. When you put them together, it was like a literal filing system that was unlocked. And I kind of pushed a little farther into it. And what I discovered was, and maybe it's different for everyone, but I discovered later on that it was linked to meridians.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm so glad you can hear that. Barely anyone knows about that.
Yeah.
It's like has to do with like the phi ratio concept of our the spiral of our fist, and like how you can, if you wanted to, you can open all these portals on all the knuckles and the structures of the joint and the gates and locks and stuff, and they can all like link to an elemental energy where you can draw energy in, as well as you can pump it out and like unleash it. And like offense or healing or whatever. Yeah, that's cool that you were able to tune into that.
No, it was a very real thing. I've been telling other people about it since then. Literally, it was like a frequency that, you know how someone's all, hey, so like, have you seen that thing over there? And you're like, oh, what? Oh, damn. It's like you would not have known unless someone was like, hey, did you know that's over there? And so now here we are years later, and I'm like, hey, there's a filing system within your body. And here, this is another kind of thing that I've unlocked about it. One of the sort of entry points to being able to use, to discern, or to even kind of flow energy into it's almost like in order to plug in the drivers for the software, one of the sort of energy, not energy center, a pathway that we'll need to activate within the body. Well, there's two of them, but they're within the ring finger and the middle finger, the pericardium and the triple warmer, which are all about who we let in, under what conditions, how we experience certain energy, the security systems our energy body has, how we use our discernment, all of those things. And so when we open those channels, it's like people are able to perceive that on a different level. But anyway, before I go on a long tangent, I know we've kept you here for a long time. For those of you guys that want to get a session with Sean, go to PsionicLeague.com. And before we go, are there any messages, anything you want to mention or talk about that you want to tell people about, even if it's in a totally different area that we've been talking about? Anything?
Sure. Can you link how people can find you? And also after this, I'd love to exchange with you because you've grown tremendously. So I'd like to. I'll trade your free session for a free session. Yeah, we can, and any other healers out there. I also like trading abilities and sessions. So if you feel free to contact me if you want to trade. I'd like to trade with you later, Matthew. So let me know when you're.
Oh, totally. I would. Yeah, definitely. You can find me as always at rememberyourmission.com. And if you're one of the people that's lingering in the background of this strange video here, please hit the subscribe button. We do have a little bit of a goal to get to 5,000. And so, don't worry, you can ceremoniously cancel me later by unsubscribing. The second I do one thing you don't like, you could make a show out of it and be like, boom, I'm out of here. Screw that guy. So it'll give you some satisfaction later, or you'll learn something new. And anyway, that said, enough about me. Anywhere else, anything else you have coming up, or where people can find you? What's going on in the world of Sean?
Sure. And don't you dare smash that like button or
Oh yeah, that as
share
well.
us.
All of the social
don't you
cues and
dare.
like the colloquialisms for
Don't,
social
don't you
inclusion.
dare get don't you dare get this to 5,000 plus views.
Yeah,
otherwise we'll have to come back and do this show again and give you a piece of our mind.
Totally. We'll utterly baffle you. But yeah.
Well, I couldn't say a lot, but I'm sure you could, so I'd also like to get your ending. I'm very thankful for everyone on this planet. So thank you so much, and especially those that have even got that waded through all the distraction in the world to even find us. So congrats! Like I'm giving gifts for free just for that. Thank you so much for being with us and holding the line and being strong. You're doing more than you know. It may not feel like it because there's a large amount of emotions that are put on people's shoulders that no one acknowledges, the deep secret little wars that are going on internally in everyone. I acknowledge my seat, what the struggles you're dealing with. I thank you, brother and sister, for fighting the great fight and holding up the huge weight of who you are and what you came here to do and what we're facing this planet, and I appreciate you so much. We're brothers in arms. We're we'll past in the unseen, your higher self, like a big ass ghost that expands and does chess moves around the planet, will be constantly growing as you upgrade yourself. You become more and more aware. You're awakening your inner self. You expand in love and your own joy and make your life better and be the greatest self. That's the main focus. If that will make everything better, you become your greatest self.
Totally. True authenticity.
And live that life and know everything about this reality. Know thyself.
Ooh. Yeah, thank you. Get ready for an anticlimactic thing. Seriously, we're gonna do an anticlimax. Get ready, because there's a question I'm gonna ask you before we go. Sorry, Sean, you're like right as you thought you were gonna go. We were gonna pull you back in because we had a question go by that I just wanted to address before we get out of here. And yes, we will go after that, but. Can you tell us anything about the thymus and the thymic chakra? A lot of people that I work with are having just activations within the thymic chakra. For me, I've discovered the thymic chakra as one of our most lively empathic microphones or magnets. For those that are developing and feeling energy of others, it's very active. But it's gone by a couple times in the chat, and a couple other people have asked me lately, what's your view on glands and portals and the thymus activating in the body? What do you think? That'll be our last question. Sorry.
There's a lot people already know. Like it has to do with a lot of who we become, our future self, the adults we become, the expansion of hormones, of the immunity, of the higher heart is anchored into it as I've seen like multiple energetic hearts having to do with activations from other lives and DNA tech, like our main heart, the heart on the opposite end, and then the one above that. And that will have to do with a lot of expansion of love tech, which love in general contains pretty much most types of energy. So it's like if you advance in love, you're advancing in pretty much everything else. So it's like one of the big things to form. Clearing it, making it pure, like in growing up, which is hard because, as a child, who can even comprehend this stuff. But you can even send healing back in time to yourself to support your who you are in the hologram now.
Back in time to yourself as a child.
Yeah. And then there's like like with all the organs, there's like a false projection coming from like the shadow or the ego that makes the false thymus, and that will affect a lot of like a back and forth of who we become constantly, and that's as you transmute that and face that and purify that, and it will no longer have to be as much of a struggle. and opening the expansion of a resilient love, so you feel love all the time, and it doesn't go back down to our expansion versus contraction. It like keeps growing. That will be a big part of it. There's a lot of tech there though too.
Yeah.
Libraries of stuff and information into the fractality of every grain or cell of our structure, and love immunity, like with the immune system of it, that also goes into it.
I definitely agree. The thymic chakra, from my observation, at least from the energy, I kind of approached like energy body anatomy from a much more clinical perspective. I think it's one of the things that's helped me kind of like, I guess, do well in working with it, because I never had any training, really no training whatsoever. Is that I have observed through just direct observation within myself and others over the past, I don't know, 5 or so years, that the thymus activates alongside another energy center, well, several others, but one of the primary ones that activates alongside with is what we might call the soul star chakra, which extends a little bit of a distance up above the head. And what happens when these kind of partnerships begin between chakras, because there's many chakras have like there's a partner, just like with the meridians, is that it facilitates the flow into other areas of the body. So as the thymic chakra activates, not only do we return to themes of childhood and emotional programming, which stand directly in the way of your empathic and intuitive abilities. So what you'll do is you'll start to encounter old themes from other stages of your life through an emotional perspective. As we kind of break through and deal with it and kind of work with it, that allows this sort of empathic activation process to kind of start within the body. And so you can imagine, as the thymic chakra activates, it goes whoop right up to the above the top of the head. And when the soul star activates alongside it, it seems as though, and this is a thing that I've observed, that you can't really tell what's happening with other people, but you can observe the process where you'll be able to see and feel that something's going on. And it seems as though when the soul star chakra begins to spin alongside the thymic chakra, it's like we start to receive a different layer of information entering the energy body. And I think that's where certain elements of what we might call our missions or our assignments or personas will activate within the body. Kind of like, check this out, when you go through puberty and the thymus, like the actual thymus, starts to excrete hormones and you go through a little bit of an identity change, a maturation of sorts. There's an energetic multidimensional version of it that seems to happen within the thymus as well. And anyway, any thoughts on that? I know we're keeping you here. We're like pulling you.
Oh yeah, I'd agree with that totally. There's a lot of depth to it, because the Egyptians got heavy into the mystery school. They even had the comical hats that like represent a representation of it. When I read into the timeline, they had a lot more open. The organ itself was more activated in Egypt until the fall of Egypt, which was around the Akhenaten time. A lot of curses, invasions, and things happened around that time. And you know, the big mystery school dark factions like took over, and the grid system went to hell. So like most of people's thymuses got shut down. If you were to see like all the organs going back to in Chinese and other things that they call, there's like a spirit to each organ called the Po, or god of the organ, whatever, and that represents like lineages. Every organ, every life you've had an organ, the representation of that, the link to the soul, the DNA lineage of every organ in a collective as well. The separate, but could be a unified collective of organs that usually will be like very challenged and disrupted, and then having to quarantine themselves and sometimes steal each other's energy, and it sucks. But like you can have a nice system. There's like mystery school aspects to that, and the flow of chi throughout like the 5 elemental qigong things in Chinese medicine. There's so the like how the collective consciousness has like how the governments like to be take the main control over everything. They're trying to take control of the brain of the collective consciousness. If you were to imagine there's a brain that links to everyone in a species on this planet. Same thing, there's an organ that represents all, that will influence all the organs of people, and those aren't doing very well. So those can be healed and made better. and strengthened with a lot of like resilience, fortressing, safety, offense, defense, deep possession, and a lot of the root chakra stuff to like disperse the darkness that's invaded into them as that like comes online. They have a thing in Egypt that back then it was easier to have visions, to see into other worlds, is if you're on DMT all the time.
Yep.
And it's like having connection to your mon eye, like how you can go in money. Your singular eye, that was the first eye that like all life coming into existence, the first like optic of like perceiving and scanning into an environment, like a ping pong ball of energy coming off and then back to it, being able to perceive 360 degrees around themselves with the influence of magnetic field. This
I have literally experienced
that quite a bit from the heart field.
Whoa. Sorry to cut you off there.
Like, feelings on the heart by like holding it front and back, giving large amounts of love, purification, smiling to it, and giving enough time, at least 5 minutes, until like the organ generator activates and it starts emitting an energy that makes the organ better. There's quite a bunch of layers to the full purification of it. So like just keep doing it every day to gain a whole bunch of energy. I'll like turn on the organs. If I didn't sleep for 3 days, if I turn on the organ generators, I'll feel like I had a whole bunch of coffee and it just work out. It's wonderful.
Well, here it's funny that you somehow mentioned the 360-degree viewing phenomenon. Back in the day, actually, honestly, right around the time you and I met in 2016, I was having those experiences. I would literally go to the gym after work and I would just be on something like on like an elliptical, and like all of a sudden it would be like shh, boom, and I would be able to perceive literally everything around me, everything. And honestly, it was confusing and it was blissful and it was weird and it lasted for a very short time. And it was like, I think there was maybe a multiple short handful of experiences, and then it was just gone, but it's definitely real, a very real phenomenon. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, that said, thank you for answering additional questions. I guarantee you a lot of people are going to come back and hang out with us next time we do this. So I look forward. I genuinely look forward to having another discussion with you again. In the meantime, for everybody that's still watching us, thanks. We did a little bit of a false ending so we could throw off some of the AI archons. We had to make them think we were leaving so they would go out of the room, and then we could talk about the real sensitive things, which all just came through in a really weird telepathic packet that a lot of you guys got when you mentioned your crowns were tingling and you were feeling something. It was like a packet that got delivered. For real though, seriously, a literal packet. And the false ending was not intentional, but there was an actual download that occurred. So I'm excited for those of you guys that will experience that and feel that in your own way. For those of you guys who are interested, look up Sean at PsionicLeague.com. And we're going to be back next week. But next week, guys, we're coming back on Sunday the 20th. We're going to be on Sunday instead of Saturday. And next week, we're going to bring one of the other favorite people who I've been watching literally every day, Ivan Teller. Ivan Teller is going to come back, and I'm going to ask him a bunch of weird questions. And for those of you guys that are here that are watching Sean and you're able to view into strands of DNA, you might recognize a little bit of a lineage frequency between seanbond and Ivan Teller. So if you don't know who Ivan Teller is, Sean, you should check out his work. You guys have a similar realm frequency. There's a strand of similarity. And so Ivan's going to be back next Sunday. In the meantime, you guys, please do subscribe to this channel. Check out Sean's channel as well. You have a YouTube as well. Is it PsionicLeague on YouTube?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, please subscribe. A lot of free videos. How can people reach you?
They can reach me at School of Multidimensional Intuition, and also rememberyourmission.com. So in the meantime, Sean, seriously, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being totally authentic. Thank you for being a key part of my awakening journey. You were one of the people in the beginning who literally gave me a key and was like, here you go. I think you know how to do this, or here, I think this is yours, like in a weird way. And so thank you for being one of those people. For everyone else that's hanging out, we love you. We'll be back next week. And thanks for watching the School of Multidimensional Intuition, everybody. We'll see you on another timeline. Take care.